My name is Mariame with the Houston Young Lawyers Foundation. I'm joined by my colleagues Daniel O'Neill and Lisa Luce-Parker. We are very excited with our panelists today, Christina Triggs, Diane Cervenka, and Laura Lewis. Thank you all so much for joining. I know we have a lot of participants from the Houston Young Lawyers Association, from the Leadership Academy, and from the foundation, members of both of the organization's boards. The Houston Young Lawyers Foundation is the sister charitable organization of the Houston Young Lawyers Association. The mission at the heart of the organization is giving $50,000 a year to nonprofits in our Houston area, and that would not be possible without the support of our lawyer community. Today we will have 1 hour of CLE credit, and we'll put that CLE number in the chat. The discussion will be moderated by Daniel, and I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's going to introduce our speakers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mariame, thank you so much for inviting me to introduce our amazing panelists for today's CLE. To get started, Christina Triggs is the Campaign Development Director at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Christina has been with LLS for over 6 years, fostering partnerships with community leaders, board members, donors, volunteers, and staff. Christina manages their Visionaries and Student Visionaries of the Year campaigns, resulting in over $6.5 million raised for the LLS mission and a 300% increase in revenue over her 6-year impact. Her favorite part of the role is working with high-performing Houston leaders, building strong relationships with each, and coaching them to implement innovative peer-to-peer fundraising tactics. Christina finds it incredibly rewarding to work with the local Houston leaders who are willing to push themselves out of their comfort zone to achieve something bigger than themselves and for a greater cause, to cure cancer. She is proud to work for an organization driving cures for cancer. Next, we have Diane Cervenka, who is the Director of Development for the University of St. Thomas in Houston. Diane loves raising money for issues that are important to her. She would rather try and fail than not try at all. Diane is a diverse fundraiser who has led the development department for Catholic Charities, raised money for the #1 Cancer Institute, and created an endowment campaign for the Houston Bar Foundation. She helps Houston, Texas Exes and Victory Houston raise money in her free time. And last but certainly not least, we also have Laura Lewis, who was the runner-up for Leukemia and Lymphoma Woman of the Year in 2022 for the Gulf Coast, raising over $196,000. Laura also serves on Greater Houston Partnerships Finance Committee and is a member of the GHP Executive Women's Partnership. She served over 7 years on the board of directors for the YMCA and is a chairperson for a 2-year rotation. Laura is a native Houstonian and attended the University of Texas in Austin, McCombs School of Business. She is a CPA and is CFO for Mears Holdings, LLC. Laura is married to Johnny Lewis, and they have 3 boys, Peyton, who's 23, Preston, who is 21, and Parker, who is 18. The younger 2 both attend the University of Texas in Austin. As a recent empty nester, Laura enjoys spending time at the beach or lake. And this is part of her biography, so I'm going to say it. And I don't think I've ever said this before as someone that did not go to UT Austin. Hook 'em horns. Yeah. So thank you so much, all 3 of you, for being here. And I'll pass it on so we can get started on all the questions we have for them.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so I guess let's just dive in. I think that's the best way to do it. So we have a fantastic panel here. We want to thank you all for joining us. By way of just introducing us to your organization, so we've kind of a 2-part question. Are some funding sources more sustainable than others from what you all have seen working with your organizations? And if so, how does that factor into your nonprofit strategy?
I'll start. Looking at the giving history of the study that comes out annually, the majority of gifts are given by individuals, over 70%. So being a major gift officer in various organizations, I've always looked at individuals for giving. Foundations, you may get more money versus but individuals, the majority of money given to nonprofits is going to come from individuals. So that's where we focus. Of course, we do use grants and foundations, corporate, but statistically, the majority of the money is going to come from individuals.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. Being in the peer-to-peer fundraising world, most of our donations and majority come from those personal gifts, from people who have been involved with our organization or friends and family of our volunteers and donors who pull them in.
Yeah, I come to it from a little bit different perspective, right? So I'm in the for-profit world, but like to spend a lot of time helping and dedicating, giving back to charitable organizations that I have a passion for. And my success was really around diversifying and trying to approach all avenues. So when I fundraised and raised the $196,000, it was from a combination of corporate sponsors, friends, and events. And so, you know, I think especially given kind of what's happening in the Houston economy and how closely we're tied to oil and gas, and then you had COVID, like you really have to tap into all of your resources and you can't take just a singular approach with any one. And we also see it. So in the Greater Houston Partnership, in the Finance Committee, there's a significant amount of fundraising they have to do to fund everything they do to help the city of Houston. And it's so tied to corporations. And when you see some of those corporations going through hardships, and if that money goes away, it's really hard to replace. So you've got to have all those alternate sources of, fundraising to come in.
Excellent. And so a specific follow-up question for Laura. So we have a lot of lawyers in the audience who are dedicated to supporting a nonprofit in a variety of different ways. You are definitely an inspiring example of somebody who found success in fundraising while outside of a nonprofit, while holding a leadership position in your profession. Kind of two-part question. What advice do you have for others seeking to follow in this path, but who experience some hesitancy or discomfort? And what are some of the biggest lessons you learned during your journey?
Thank you for that, Daniel. I think my advice is whatever you're going to do, you have to believe in that organization, right? Because that's what's going to inspire you to do it. My whole issue was I'm an accountant, right? I go and I crunch numbers and I look at spreadsheets all day and I reflect back on my life and I'm like, how am I helping to make the world a better place? And that's really why we get involved, right? Like we want to help, we want to be a part of the solution. So you've got to find an organization that you can really relate to their mission because you're giving from your heart, right? Like you're not getting paid to do this. You're doing this because you're getting something back from it. So it's really going to be about the people in the organization that you meet and really believing in the mission. And the lessons learned is things change over time. And like I was with the YMCA a long time and I got a lot out of it, but they had a lot of turnover and a lot of change. And, they started kind of going a different direction and don't be afraid to change paths, right? Like we ended great. And I said, you know what, it's time for me to go and give, my heart wasn't in it anymore. I'm going to go find a new organization where I can be all in. And so, there's tons of charities out there and you just need to pick one that you can really connect to and that you believe in. Because in sitting on boards, I cannot tell you how many board members just don't participate. They would come, they would sit and they would listen, but they wouldn't talk, they wouldn't fundraise, they wouldn't do anything. In my mind, I'm like, as a chairperson, I'm like, why are you even here? And it's just because they didn't have the passion. So you really have to do it, not for your resume, but because you have a passion about it and you're wanting to make a difference to change the world.
I'd like to add something to that. I came from the for-profit world and was volunteering in the nonprofit world. And that's when I made the transition. Eventually I made the transition. And I'm a person who can ask anyone for anything. But I know there are a lot of people that are uncomfortable making asks. If you can just make the connection to someone who is comfortable making the ask for help. you know, those connections are very valuable. And if there's someone who you think would be interested, have a passion for your organization, ask for help. Because usually there's someone who doesn't mind asking people, and then you can make that relationship, and that's very important.
Definitely. I love the sound of that. Anything collaborative is good. It is definitely an election year. So this is something that is kind of on everybody's mind. So for this next question, given the increasingly divisive political atmosphere, how can nonprofits best evaluate, quote unquote, taking a stand on the issues, and how that potentially might impact their donor pool, both positively and negatively?
I'll go again. You know, you just have to stay true to your mission. If your mission does not align with someone, there are times, I mean, I've had to turn down money because someone's mission, I mean, I work for MD Anderson. We obviously could not take money from tobacco unless it came from the tobacco settlement with the attorneys. We could take that, but we couldn't take money from cigarette companies. You know, there are some times that you just have to stick with your mission. And while it's hard as a nonprofit not to accept money, you know, you have to believe what you do and stick by it.
Yeah.
I experienced that a lot of firsthand with Greater Houston Partnership, right? When the new mayor came in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, we used to do State of the City, and it was a great event that we held that brought in a bunch of money. But Greater Houston Partnership and the direction they wanted to go and where the mayor wanted to go was not aligned. And we just had to say, we're no longer going to do that event. And we went to some virtual events and replaced it. So you do have to be willing to make the hard decisions, because if it does go against your mission, you're going to lose credibility and you're going to lose donors anyways. So I would rather lose donors for staying true to what I'm saying I'm believing than flip-flopping and having people be confused and upset and then pull their money.
Yeah. I think that's so important. I think the first thing I thought of is we want to stay true to our mission too, and focused on our patients, right? And so we try to kind of stay out of a lot of the issues and make sure that our donors, our volunteers, our supporters all know that what we're focused on and what our dollars are going to is putting our patients first, fighting for their rights, and making sure that they're getting the resources that they need no matter what is going on.
And in the world of increasing professional specialization these days, what is the best new skill or skill set that anyone working in the space could focus on developing further? And where would they go to start trying to develop that further? Christina, do you want to start that one off?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my role in peer-to-peer fundraising, I work with volunteers like Laura, and we bring in new volunteers every year, and we really work with them to build out a fundraising plan and figure out what their strengths are. And so one of the things that we really focus on teaching our candidates and our volunteers and encouraging them to do is be able to storytell and build relationships. And the people are going to support them and support the organization because they are asking them personally. They have that personal relationship with them. And then they're also going to give because they were able to convey their passion and tell a good story on why those dollars are important to their campaign and to LLS. Houston is a very philanthropic area. Everyone loves to give. And so you're just showing why to give to LLS or why to give to the organization that you are passionate about.
So I'd like to follow up that because Christina was my mentor, you know, that helped me raise the $200,000. And when we first sat down, I told her I could maybe raise $3,000. Your joke was on me because her skill, she's fabulous, by the way. And her skill is follow-up, consistency. She was there every week. Did you do this? Did you do this? Have you thought about this? Did you talk to this? And it held me accountable. And I think that, you know, it's, you know, sometimes can be perceived as, oh, you're harassing me. So there's an elegance to it because she did it as my teammate, my champion, my partner. She was cheering for me. She wanted me to be successful. And without her, you know, in my ear, reminding me like, you need to do this, you need to do that. I would never have been successful as I was. So I think that's an amazing skill to be able to be able to do it, but not to be, you know, annoying or too hard.
I think too, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier and just finding that partnership, right? Finding that person who can help you if you're trying to raise funds or help out a nonprofit in any way, just finding that person, the organization that can partner with you to achieve your goals.
So the way I fundraise is a little different. I do not do peer-to-peer. I go directly to donors and ask for major gifts, which is $25,000 to millions. And one of the things I think is important right now is really developing your relationships with people and networking to meet new people. That's what we're really working on currently.
Do you all have a book, a podcast, or some other thing that is your required reading to work in this field? Something that, you know, when you don't know what to do, that's what you go to and try and get some inspiration out of. Diane, let's start with you on that one.
For basic, like someone coming into the nonprofit world, there's a book called Nonprofit Fundraising 101, and it kind of goes over all the different aspects, the major gifts, grant writing, corporate, you know, it kind of answers all your questions. It's at a very, it's very basic, but then there are so many different areas. There's Association of Fundraising Professionals that is the organization that you can go to. We have a chapter here in Houston, and they have a lot of webinars you can see for different subjects, whatever, you know, you're interested in learning about.
Yeah, similar. One of the first books I read, I think it was called like The Ask or The Art of the Ask. And it's just all about how to get comfortable asking people. That's not always a unique strength of everyone's. So just getting comfortable with that, getting comfortable being like turned down in the ask and not taking it personally. So started out with that. And then also anything kind of around different personalities. Again, we've talked a lot about it's important to build relationships with people when you're asking them for help. And so if you know kind of the way they work or the way they think, or just kind of a little bit more about their personality, it goes a long way in building that relationship.
Yeah, I would say I don't have a book or a podcast. And honestly, I kind of fell into fundraising. That really wasn't my intention to start off. It was just to get involved and give back. But I think it just goes down to the basic principle in all kind of professionalism and leadership is do what you say you're going to do. And, you know, I think that, you know, I made a commitment, I was going to fundraise. And so I had to follow up, I had to stay on top of it. And then just communicating back, because when you are going to the individuals and even the corporations, like, you know, you don't want to just take their money and run. Like, you got to follow back up. Like, this is what we did. And they're part of the solution, and let them celebrate with you. So I think that's a big piece of, because typically you want them to continue giving. So you have to make sure that they're getting value and they see the value in their investment so that they will give again.
I'd like to follow up on Christina's answer. She talked about declines. And just to let you know, when I worked at MD Anderson, we raised $200 million a year in our department. We have one of the most successful fundraising departments in the city. And that our average was out of 10 asks, we got 4 no's. And these are people who are, a lot of our donors are diagnosed with cancer, and you know, they'll do a lot thinking that some people think the more you give, then the better their diagnosis is going to be. you know, you've just got a lot of emotion there. But just to let you know that every time you ask someone, you're not going to get a yes. So it's just maybe not right now, but don't let that discourage you. Because, and then as Laura said, it's not a one and done. You bring these donors in, you want to develop them and keep them as donors. So it's so important to keep that relationship going.
And so I'll follow up to a lot of what I've heard is it better for a nonprofit to have one giant donor or 100 small donors where, you know, the money is still going to wind up? So, you know, from your perspectives, what's better, that one big donor or 100 small donors, and why?
I'll start. I think there's pros and cons to both. I mean, one donor to give you all the money you need would be great, obviously less work, but if that donor changes their mind, their passion goes somewhere else, you know, I think you have more stability with more donors. But I mean, there's pros and cons to both. So I guess I would be more comfortable with more donors, but it sure would be nice to have one donor and be done.
Absolutely. I think too, again, I'm coming from this peer-to-peer fundraising world. It's definitely the more donors, because if we have 100 and they each touch 5 more people and they each touch 5 more people, just the way that that can grow and escalate could do so much for us as an organization. But it would be very nice just to like be able to wrap it up in a nice bow with just one big donor.
And Laura, any thoughts?
No, I agree with everything they're saying. It's my investment strategy, diversify.
Okay. And we just got an amazing question from the audience. So we're going to pivot to that. As a nonprofit serving food desert communities and underserved communities, what advice can you share for finding individual donors for this organization?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what the organization does.
Oh, it's a nonprofit serving food desert communities and underserved communities.
Okay, food deserts. So I worked at Catholic Charities and we had food pantries and food deserts. You know, there are so many great organizations working with food insecurities right now. In fact, even at University of St. Thomas, we have food pantries for our students and people who live in the area.
Just to add a little bit, we got a little more information. It's a urban garden nonprofit. If that is going to change anybody's answers.
I don't know that much about that nonprofit, but I would think it's working with the people in the area that you might find support from.
I know I can add at the YMCA, they all have food pantries, and you know, there's a YMCA in every community across Houston. And they love to partner with other organizations. So I would say reach out to your local YMCA and see if you can connect with their food pantry. I know they would go into apartment complexes that some of the YMCAs actually run the daycare centers in the apartment complexes, and then they'll bring the food to the families that live there. So you could partner up with them as well.
Probably also Houston Food Bank. Talk to them and see what, you know, Brian may be able to help them.
And I know I'm just moderating, I'm not really answering questions. It just happens that, so I graduated from Leadership Houston. I know some of the board members from like Plant It Forward and some other allied nonprofits. The theme that I've been hearing from a lot of these answers, especially from Christina, has been collaboration. So the only answer, in as much as it is an answer, is to find people who are doing kind of similar things and just kind of pick their brains about it. Those are the experts. Anybody else have additional thoughts you want to share on that question?
Daniel, that's kind of where my thought went to when it said like finding individual donors is just finding people in your community who also have that same passion as you, and then using them to kind of connect to new donors, and just again using almost that like word of mouth and passion to find new people to bring in.
Excellent. Thank you for that question. We really do appreciate the audience participation. And so Mariame already put in the chat, but yeah, if you all have any questions, don't hesitate. Throw them in the chat and we will address them as they come in. Okay, so shifting gears, one of the other questions that we were hearing about for people that were interested in coming here today, there are some lawyers who don't want to be lawyers anymore, and there's always transferable skills. You know, if that's one of the good things about law school that they don't always talk about. So if somebody, and particularly from a legal background, wanted to change jobs and start working with, you know, in the space of nonprofit fundraising, what are some traits you have seen over the years and some of your, you know, successful colleagues? And when you look in the mirror, what are some of your best traits that you feel like make somebody successful in this field? Christina, sorry, Laura, you go.
Just networking, relationship building, follow through, public speaking, right? You're selling your charity. You're competing with every other charity out there. And there's only, you know, so many dollars in the city that can go toward your charity. And so you've got to be like any marketing skills and social media, you've got to get out there. You've got to tell your story. You've got to sell it. And you've got to draw people in.
Yeah. I imagine something that everyone would be very good at that I could probably learn from is like those exploratory questions. So like when we sit down with a potential donor or volunteer, we're trying to learn a lot about them to figure out how they could pair with our mission or help us, or how we can show them that this would be something that they would be interested in and passionate about. So through all of my conversations and working with volunteers, we're always trying to probe and get those exploratory questions going and learn about them. So I imagine that's something y'all are very good at.
I think one of the things that's important, I came from a very profitable industry of pharmaceuticals to the nonprofit world, and it is having servant leadership. There's definitely a pay difference between the nonprofit world and the for-profit world. And I wouldn't say it's, well, it can be significant. So you're doing it because you love what you do, you believe in what you do, that sometimes you're working very hard, but you're not necessarily compensated for it. So it is understanding you're doing it because you love to do it. And you're doing it because you believe in it and you believe in servant leadership. I think that's important.
So one of the things earlier that I loved hearing about that I didn't know about before we got on this panel is that Christina was a mentor to Laura. Panel, you know, we can open this up. Can you give us some thoughts on how you find a good mentor, what makes a good mentor? I mean, in the legal world, it is very flattering for a junior lawyer to come up to me and say, you know, would you be my mentor? Does that work the same way in the nonprofit fundraising world, or is there, you know, is there a competition? So, you know, just wide open for your thoughts on all of that.
Well, the way I paired up with Christina was the way they fundraise for LLS is they pick basically 20 candidates, and it's a 10-week competition for those 20 candidates to raise as much money as they can. So I was nominated to be a candidate, and Christina, because she runs LLS, you know, was my mentor there. So I kind of was assigned her, but by being willing to volunteer and raise my hand for something, I had no idea what I was really getting into, but I believed in the mission. You know, I met her and I got to work with her, and that has been phenomenal for me in development and growth and fundraising, because she's an expert in this field. So I guess my advice, and actually we're looking for candidates. I'm actually chairing the LLS Visionary Campaign for 2024. We have space for 4 more candidates. So if you are looking for a challenge to be in a leadership role and compete in a competition for 10 weeks to raise as much money as you can. Christina can be your mentor too. I know, sorry for the sales pitch, but I had to go there. You set me up, Daniel. So, but really being willing to say yes and be vulnerable and just jump in and try something that I really wasn't comfortable doing connected me with people in this industry that are really good at what they're doing. I don't know, Christina, what do you want to add to it?
No, I think you hit it. I think too, especially with the way our campaigns work, just asking, we have people, mentors, we have volunteers that have been around for years that are always looking to help and explain how they got into it and how they've been involved with the organization for 10 plus years. And so I think just being willing to raise your hand and say, this is something I'm interested in. Do y'all know someone who could help me or mentor me or pair them with me? I think just being willing to ask. There's always someone there that wants to help.
Diane, any additional thoughts?
Oh, I think they got it.
Awesome. So we have another question from the audience, and I just want to say we have an amazing audience. They're being very active and asking questions. We love that. So thank you all in the audience that are asking questions and sending those in. So the question is, I found that some donors for my organization are interested in donating specifically towards the tickets that we provide and indicate that they are not interested in covering operational costs like legal, web, accounting. What is a good approach to fundraising for sustaining the organization?
I mean, we experience this at the YMCA, right? Because there are
It's a training, but I'm muted. Okay.
there are operational costs. And so I think as much transparency as you can give people as to what your dollars are going toward. And so at YMCA, we set up where you could specify a specific event or like kind of task that they were donating for. So 100% of it would go there. And then you'd have some other donors that wouldn't mind a portion of their donation going to the overhead costs. But we would break it down. We do a pie chart and we'd show all the wonderful things we're doing with the money. And then it's usually a very, very small sliver that's supporting overhead costs, but it's a reality. If you want to run a nonprofit, there's overhead costs. But the transparency with that and then communicating all the good stuff the dollars are doing, I think can help overcome that.
I know at all the organizations I've been involved with, there are some people that they only want events, but you can, with events, usually those are unrestricted dollars, so you can use them for overhead. But I know at Catholic Charities, we only had 8% of our money we used for the organization costs. And really promoting that 92% was going to programs. So really watching your budget, and when you do, then people aren't as opposed to supporting organizational costs. And there are some foundations that will support organizational funding versus strictly program.
Yeah, I think the transparency piece is so key there. It's like when we do our gala at the end of the year and I tell a donor that, you know, we're getting the florals in kind, we're getting all of these things donated, it makes them feel more comfortable about what we are spending our money on, that we're also putting in that work to make sure that we're keeping the cost low. So just being open to having those conversations with people, I think goes a long way.
I think the other thing that's popping into my mind, which I loved as a fundraising tool, is auctions. Because people are, companies, they'll be willing to give tickets to events, concerts, whatever. And then the people that are bidding on those, they're happy because they're getting whatever prize they're winning. And then that money can go toward whatever overhead costs you want. So it's kind of a way to kind of take it out of the conversation. And your donor's happy because they got their tickets, and people giving the tickets aren't really worried about, is this going to overhead costs? Because it's, really extra tickets they have that would potentially go unused.
So the CLEs that Mariame and I throw, we love having people walk away with some practical tips. So this is where the rubber kind of meets the road. What are some practical tips for making the ask? And kind of as a follow-up to that, do you find that phone calls to potential donors are more effective than emails? What about in-person meetings? How has the pandemic even really kind of affected this over the last couple of years?
I'll start. Making the ask, if I'm gonna make an ask, I'm gonna do it in person. I mean, I've usually met with the person multiple times. We've done a well screening on the person. So I know my ask is not too low, not too, well, you hope the information you have, you know, you've also got to learn from them during your visits, you know, do they have the ability to make $1 million gift, or should I just be asking for 100,000? You know, you can look at their house and, you know, what kind of cars they drive. You know, you have to use some of just the information you gather. Granted, they could be in debt up to their eyeballs, but there are well screening tools that you can use to see, kind of help you to guide your ask. But I always make asks in person. I try to do a phone call over an email. If I'm just clarifying something from a conversation, I'll use email, but generally I try to do it in person or on the phone. I rarely have made an ask over the phone or by email. But again, I'm asking for gifts of $25,000 or more. And at the time of COVID, I was working in healthcare, so we were open the whole time because we had clinics. So that it didn't affect me like it did other people. I was not as proficient at Zoom as everyone else because I was still meeting donors in person. So I can't really address that.
I mean, for me personally, my ask, it was any dollar amount, right? I'll take $10. So I approached from all avenues, social media, business partners, friends, and it's not, for me, it's trying to explain, like, this isn't a fun run. I'm not trying to raise $3,000, although I thought that would have been fine, but Christina said no. So it's follow through, it's the relationship. And so when I even struggle getting like my best friends to support me, you know, and it's just, I kept having to think outside the box, and I'm going to do an event and I'm going to invite people here and I'm going to market that event. And so after a while, people are like, what is this you're doing? Like, why do I keep seeing it? And once they understand your why and the story and what you're trying to accomplish, they all came through, and they came through with flying colors. So you have to, it goes back to like marketing, getting your story out there, not being afraid to ask and ask again and follow through. In person is always better. But you know, from my perspective, I hit it on every cylinder. And I'm sure I annoyed some people, but at the end of the day, I didn't lose any friends. At the end of the day, everyone was like, I'm proud of you. You did something good. And if they didn't want to give, like, no hard feelings. And I don't think they held it against me that I was annoying. I hope not, but we'll see.
No, because it takes 4 to 6 touch points usually for someone on this peer-to-peer fundraising side to give, because everyone has really good intentions, but they get busy or they get distracted, whatnot. And so it does take those gentle reminders to finally close the ask and get the yes on any level. But two, I think I sound like a broken record, but it's just that relationship building. When you go to make the ask, they need to know about the organization. They need to know where the dollars are going, and they need to know your passion inherent in the ask of why you're supporting this organization.
And I think there is a difference between peer-to-peer versus major gifts. And you've got to take that into account. I mean, we do, you know, at the University of St. Thomas and all the different organizations I've worked with, we use social media, mail, we do e-blasts. That's where it comes to knowing your donor and how best to communicate with them.
With the social media, I think that brings up a good follow-up question. has all the Facebook and the LinkedIn and all that been a good thing for the field or a bad thing, neutral? How often do y'all use it? It sounds like Diane probably uses it for background research and the wealth screening that kind of factors into it. But how about y'all?
It's great for awareness, is what we kind of always point out, is that it's great for people to know about what you're doing and to learn about the organization. We don't ever see the big dollars come from social media. And funny, now we see a lot more coming even just from like LinkedIn than Facebook or Instagram or anything else. But yeah, great for bringing awareness to the organization about what you're doing and then telling those stories, or like for us, our candidates talking about if they were a patient themselves, like really getting that passion across. Is what we see more on social media. And again, 4 to 6 touch points. So it can always be kind of one of those gentle touch points out there.
I kind of had a neat experience with it. I did a live raffle on Facebook. So I put up a beach house, and if you gave like $50, you'd be entered in a raffle to win a weekend at it. And so then on live Facebook, I, showed everyone that entered it, and I did a random number generator because I love it, spreadsheets. And, the winner, and I announced it live on Facebook. So that like something kind of different to leverage it. But then it got awareness because other people are watching it and like, what is this? What is she giving away? Why? And it's just to reiterate like what I'm doing and what I'm trying to raise money for and bringing awareness. The other thing that I think LLS does a great job with is these candidates, this competition, these visionaries, they highlight them. And it's great, like marketing for them, because it's getting their face out there. And so that's, I think it's all good stuff. But like Christina said, it's not going to be the huge dollars, but I think it definitely helps in building that base.
To shift gears just a little bit. So depending on who you ask, we're on the verge of or already in a recession, as those of us in the for-profit world are starting to see a lot of sensitivities that always preclude, everybody else kind of catching on to that we're in a recession. What does the nonprofit world start doing proactively as the economy starts changing and the signs are kind of in the air?
I'll go. We really focus on our resources and what we, on our budgets, but a lot of our donors are not really affected by recession. They've got their money in donor advised funds. It's already taken care of. People have the ability to write you $100,000 check today, are generally not as affected by the economy as like your lower level donors. But you still have to, be concerned because there are still the lower level donors. And so just really watch your budget and look at your resources available to you.
So when I was on the Greater Houston Partnership and COVID hit, we took a really hard look at our budget. Like you said, we stopped 401k match, we hiring freeze, no new positions added, and had to change about how we're going to do events differently, like look at different avenues and how to bring money in. But it's a balancing act, and it's important, right? Because if you run out of the donor money, like you're in big trouble, like your organization won't move forward. So you've got to keep that in line so that you'll have enough funds to cover your expenses.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think sitting down, like pulling in more volunteers, trying to get creative on how we're asking and how we're touching more people. But I think it's really encouraging because over the years, when something's been going on in the economy, we've seen some of our biggest gifts, and people are still really generous with their money. And they have it set aside. They have family foundations, they have donor advised funds. Like the money is still there to give. And sometimes they even have a bigger heart at that time because they know people need the money more than ever. So it's really encouraging to see.
And so we have about 15 minutes left. So I think we probably have 2 more questions to get through. We'll see if the audience comes up with any others, but that's just that 15-minute warning. So this is one of my favorite questions as we start trying to wrap up. We already know y'all are amazing, but this is asking you to tell us about one of your best triumphs working in this space. It's story time. So let's hear some details.
Oh, okay, I'll start. Well, my best triumph hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen on, I think it's June 3rd. So I mentioned that I'm chairing the Leukemia Lymphoma Society Gala this year. And as chair leader, I've set the target for what we're going to fundraise. And I've picked a huge, crazy goal of $2 million, which the most they've ever fundraised, I think for this event, I'm going to say 1.8, and that was a few years ago. And so it hasn't even really been anywhere near that. So to express that goal, we have a leadership team of about 20 people that are helping us fill these positions. I've mentioned we've got 15 of the 20 filled, but being willing to put myself out there and say we're going to raise $2 million and believe it and sell it and go after it is, going to be a huge accomplishment. And even if I don't make it and I come close, I'm still going to celebrate. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to, and just putting it out there and going after it. It makes Christina really happy, right?
And I'll piggyback off that because it's just so rewarding and exciting to be able to work with volunteers who set big goals, and to watch them work every day to reaching out to their networks and getting excited to achieve it is just a really rewarding part of my job. And then to see it when they achieve their goals, even like Laura, who didn't think she could raise 3,000, but then at the end raised 197. It's just great to see them step out of their comfort zones and learn something new. And I guess my biggest triumph would be when the year I was working with Laura, we had a volunteer, Meredith Rice, who raised $736,000 that year. And so being able to work with her, she had a really close personal connection to our mission. And so to work with her, and she set these big goals for herself. She shared her story. She did it. She achieved it. She brought new people in to help her, and they did it together.
I think one of my biggest accomplishments was I'm a volunteer with Victory, which we used to partner with American Cancer Society for the Cattle Barons Ball. And I had chaired the auction, and Laura, like you, I love auctions. And so I worked as hard as I could. Again, I had a full-time job that was doing this part-time. Well, the day of the ball comes, and the nickname for that ball was the mud ball. It rained so hard, and we used to be out at George Ranch. We were afraid that the roof was going to start leaking. Cars were getting stuck. I just thought it was going to be a disaster. My volunteers couldn't make it because a lot of people were flooded in. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I put so much work into this and it's going to bomb. Well, we ended up raising over $700,000 on just the auction alone for that gala. So I don't know if people were just stuck there and they kept bidding, because I know cars were stuck. But we do have a very philanthropic city. People care about a lot of different things. And so just finding that donor who has that passion for your organization.
So I have a question directly for you all, because it sounds overall the reoccurring theme I'm hearing is that you guys have found organizations and causes that you're very passionate about, and that helps drive your ability to successfully fundraise for them. So my question, I hope it's relevant to, especially the attorneys that are on the CLE, is how do you find that organization that you're passionate about? Because from my purpose, for some background, I have my full-time job as an attorney. I know the importance of volunteering, raising money, but I get a little fatigued with all the great causes and all the great organizations doing such great work. And I get emails from them asking for money or for my time. And I just find it difficult to kind of narrow down with my limited free time. What is the organization that I should support through either by helping them fundraise or by volunteering. So do you guys have any advice on how to find that organization, or maybe give some background as to how you found your current organization and how that kind of was driven by your passion?
I can start. When I came in contact with mine, most of them were just being willing to say yes. Like the opportunity kind of fell in my lap, and I kind of looked into it and I was like, yeah, this looks good. But the reason I stayed or got more engaged or a higher level of engagement was honestly the leadership of that organization. They had to believe in me as much as I had to believe in them, and we had to have that good relationship. And if I didn't believe in the leadership and how they were communicating and what they were doing with it, then I found myself backing away and I'm going to go somewhere else. And kind of the hard part is you don't know that until you jump in and figure it out. That was kind of to my earlier comment, like, don't be afraid to leave. Like, right, you got to find the right match for you. And so I think that's really what makes the difference.
I got involved with Houston, Texas X's, which we raise money for kids to go to the University of Texas, because that's my alma mater. So that was important to me. My father had died of cancer when I was in college, and that has given me the passion to work with cancer research. But I think Laura's right. You've got to look at the organization's leadership. The worst thing that they can do is waste your time. When you come to a meeting or you go to volunteer and they're not organized, they don't have anything for you to do. We all have other things we could do, other places to give our money. So the leadership is so important, but whatever is you're passionate about.
Yeah, I agree. I got involved with LLS because I have a personal connection. My dad is a cancer survivor and he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So it was an obvious connection to LLS. But again, it's what keeps you there. It's LLS being able to show where the dollars are going. We talk about the new FDA approvals. We talk about our Dare to Dream projects with pediatrics. Like, it's being able to every day be reminded of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and being able to see that passion and that excitement on all of our volunteers as well.
And so this goes back a couple of minutes. We'd heard from Laura, who mentioned the 20-person leadership team for this very impressive fundraising goal, of which we're all sending our best wishes, and we know you're going to knock it out of the park. But follow-up question to that, how have teams played a role in the fundraising successes that y'all have encountered through the projects you worked on? And what kind of advice do you have about building a leadership team for fundraising?
It's really about, so the leadership team, that it's, people that have been involved historically that want to come back and see the value in it. And I think what's been really different this year between the past and our leadership team is consistent communication, right? So it goes back into making sure they understand what your expectations are of them, what you need from them, and how they're doing a good job. And one thing that we did is we created a scoreboard. I'm sorry, this is the accountant and me coming back out, but we had like these tasks. And if you do this task, you get so many points. And when you get X number of points, you get 2 tickets to the gala. And the gala for LLS is just amazing. River Oaks, beautiful, most incredible fun night. Like, everybody's dressed up fancy, celebrating. So it's a great incentive, right? But to be clear in order to participate and be a part of this, here's what we expect from you. And you're going to get points assigned to you. So 1, it's accountability. And 2, you're getting feedback. Like, I'm doing the right thing. Because look, I got 2 free tickets. I did what they wanted me to do. So I think that has been a really good way to keep our board engaged. We set up group chats on text so that we're encouraging each other. Because what our goal for the leadership team is to go find these 20 candidates, right? And so when we find a candidate, we celebrate together. We have the blood drop. We're filling up every time we get a name to get to our 20. So we're communicating where we are in the process, how many more we need. So we're all kind of in it together. And so I think that's helped us have more success with our leadership team.
I have to brag on Laura a little bit too, because she's done a great job making the leadership team feel like they're a group working together towards one big goal, right? None of us could do it on our own. And Laura's done a great job really holding the group accountable, keeping them excited, and showing them that with the team, everyone together, we can hit that $2 million goal.
Diane, any additional thoughts?
Well, I think the question was regarding team, like peer-to-peer, was that, which I've never really done that. I've always just done like individual fundraising.
Okay. Okay, so we have 4 minutes left. So I think this is the best opportunity to say, how about some closing thoughts? Anything that y'all wanted to come here and talk about today that I have not asked you about, the audience has not asked you about, words of encouragement, and anything like that. We will take anything that y'all will share with us.
My thought is, if you're already in this organization, right? So if you're in this organization, HYLF, you already understand the importance of networking and community and building relationships. So you have a huge leg up already. Secondly, I would say, just do it. Just go out there and take a risk and get involved. And it's all about the relationships you walk away with, the information you learn. It's going to make you a better, stronger person. Even if you fail, like failure is going to make you grow. And I know, like, oh, we're busy and how do I balance? But if you're doing something you enjoy, you tend to make time for it, right? And so I would just say, be brave and go out there and call up a charity and say, I want to sit on your board. And boards right now, they are all about like diversification, right? The old 12-panel old white man board is gone. They don't want it. They can't have it. They don't need it. They want younger people. They want people with ideas and relationships and connections. So you guys are prime candidates to go sit on these non-for-profit boards. So don't be afraid just to reach out and ask, how do I get on your board? How do I get involved? And let them know, like, that's your end goal. And I think you'll find tremendous success. Because the boards are having the same issue. They're sitting there saying, how do we get these young kids like that are serious and like want to grow and want to learn and want to help?
And you are so valuable as an attorney to be on a board. You can offer them something that, a different perspective and a legal perspective. You're definitely, attorneys and doctors are very valuable to boards. But a lot of times when you're asking people for gifts, I mean, they're looking for places to support, and they actually, the studies have shown that you feel so much better. It increases your endorphins when you give. And when you are the person that brings together like the donor and the organization, and you find that fit, it's such a great feeling, and it'll give you a little release from work, to get your mind in a different place. Then you can go back and, be stronger. And it's working in the nonprofit world is, it's very challenging, but it's very rewarding. I know you have a lot of opportunities through HYLF to do different, work with different nonprofits. And then if you're members of the board at the Houston Bar Foundation and Association, they have a lot of different organizations. So there you can network with other attorneys. So I just wish you good luck.
Yeah. And I would just encourage everyone not to be afraid to reach out to organizations and get involved. We are always looking for new people and help, and can always find a place for someone. But we don't always have the manpower to be out there bringing in new people. And so would just really encourage that if you find something that you're passionate about, just reach out. And I know that organization would be more than happy to have you.
I guess I want to add one follow-up to that. We used to say, on a board I was involved in, there's 3 things we look for from our volunteers: time, treasure, and talent. And to be a good member, we said you only really need 2 of those 3. So if you survey yourself, how much time do you have? How much treasure or money do you have to give? How much talent do you have? And you guys have a lot. You have 2 or 3 of those, you are much needed and much wanted. You don't have to have them all.
Awesome. We really, really appreciated y'all joining us here today. This was a fantastic panel. We really have enjoyed this, hearing from the experts on this. So we just want to thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you who don't know, this panel came together through my partner in crime, Mariame. She is the co-chair of the HYLF Fellows Committee with me this bar year. So I want to thank Mariame for this amazing panel that she put together. So thank you, Mariame.
Thank you,
we
Daniel.
will
Thanks to our speakers.
absolutely. We will stick around for a minute or two. We're already past 1 o'clock, so people are starting to leave already for the exits to get back to work and all that. But if there are any additional questions, y'all can put your camera and your microphone on. You can ask them. You can put it in the chat. We've already put the MCLE number in the chat, so if y'all scroll up, it should be up there. For everybody who has attended, we want to say thank you. Thank you for spending an hour with us. You could have been off eating lunch somewhere, but you were joining us here, and we really do appreciate it. We have another couple of CLEs coming up through the rest of the bar year. They will be hitting the HYLA and the HYLF calendar shortly. So hopefully we see you again through the Fellows Committee CLE program. Thank you. Hope you all have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Hey, Daniel,
Bye.
can y'all wait and so I can do a photo of everybody, of the speakers, and you and Miriam, please?
Yeah.
And Nadia, you too, because you've been helping out.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I was about to take one too. I've been taking pictures the whole time.
Okay, Lisa there, did she leave?
I think
okay.
yeah, she left.
Okay, all right, everybody just look this way. 1, 2, 3, smile, keep smiling, keep smiling, keep smiling. Okay, sounds perfect. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks, this amazing panel. Y'all are like my sheroes. Thank you for everything you do. I took lots of notes.
Good luck, Laura.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye, guys.
All right. Hope you all have a great rest of the day.